you've been very outspoken about the fact, and it's great to see, that you're passionate about the horses you breed, having the chance to come back to you for life. And it's so important, isn't it, for all owners and breeders to have a plan of what they want to happen to these beautiful horses.
Yeah, well, we thought long and hard about this, and we thought, how can we do something now? So that's why we did the $1,000 buyback. If anyone's, if their horse is distressed or in need of, rehoming, instead of them finding their way to a knackery or an abattoir, if we outbid the abattoir or the knackery, then they can come home. Like we've been doing it with our horses for years. It's always been our policy. We would not sell it or sell the horses to a knackery. So, it was something that we wanted to do.
It's a great example too, and you have some fabulous horses here. I know Weekend Hussler being one of them.
Yeah, look, like I said, we've been doing it for years. Weekend Hussler, Ross McDonald's, we became good friends at the sales. He came up with his wife and they loved the farm, and they said, we want Weekend Hussler to live here. And he resides here free of charge. He's a nanny to some of the colts, and we hope some of his talent rubs off.
Yeah, exactly right. But it is important to get that message out, I guess, whether it be the breeders or owners, or, to have some sort of plan to take responsibility.
I think so, because look, we get our success from breeding these animals, and there has to be an element of responsibility. You just can't walk away. So, well, that's our view anyway. We're not going to push that view onto others. So we've got things in plan that will evolve as we move through the different aspects of things that are going on in the world at the moment. But we're going to make sure that we look after our branded horses.
The Queensland Government late last year introduced a 1% levy on prize money to assist with the state's equine welfare programs, and this year accepted the recommendations of the Martin Inquiry, pouring $6 million into thoroughbred welfare in the state. I caught up with CEO of Racing Queensland Brendan Parnell earlier in the year to find out why this is so important in the Sunshine State. Brendan, we all know how very important it is to care for thoroughbreds away from racing. What are some of the thoughts you have on what's a huge issue for the industry?
I think most people, Carolyn, have a wonderful view on the horse after a racing career and their love of a horse. But I think the role of owners really needs to step up and have greater accountability for what happens once they finish their racing careers. There are some wonderful programs, whether it's a retraining program, horses off the track. The Victorian program is an excellent off-the-track program, how they engage the show circuits, the jumping circuits and the like. In Queensland we have some fantastic programs. Tony Gollan's wife Jane runs a great retraining program. The key thing I think as administrators is creating more awareness and demand for our beautiful horses once they conclude their racing careers, because they can go into some stellar showing careers. I used to have a wonderful gelding years ago that went off to a jumping career, and he actually went on and did a lot more and won a lot more sort of hearts and minds post his racing career than he did on the racing track.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it? When you show the owners of a racehorse, you see the excitement they have when the horse wins, and they follow it all the way through. But you can get the same excitement watching that horse, show jumping or dressage, eventing, anything that they happen to do. And you can get that same engagement from the owner. I think that's a big thing to try and teach owners.
And I think the use of media, so whether it's the television media, digital, social media, is to take the owners on the journey of the horse through its future careers so they can be more engaged in watching it go show jumping or eventing. Or polo cross and polo, which is another great career.
It is really a marketing thing too, isn't it, to the equestrian world, about the incredible adaptability of the thoroughbred.
And that's right, and they're resilient animals, they're strong, they're fast, they're wonderful to work with animals and livestock. I mean, in camp drafting and the show circuits that you'll see, barrel racing, some of those sprinting types of thoroughbreds really can go into great careers. So they're versatile, and I think the thing is, there always will be a couple of % of all animals, whether it's a thoroughbred, a standard bred, or even the bovines, which aren't great mentally, but the vast majority are great animals to work with. They've got gorgeous personalities, they've all got their own characters, and the personal attachment that the future owners have with them is really personal and long term.
From a Racing Queensland point of view, what are some of the steps that need to be taken to really enforce that with owners, that it's not just you get rid of the horse and that's it, and obviously in Queensland you have a lot of country areas, rural areas where horses might be at the very end of their racing career. What would you say to some of those people about trying to rehome, potentially in quite isolated areas, but there are ways to find good homes?
Well, what we do in Queensland is we actually allow another pathway for older horses that might not be fast enough and competitive enough in the southeast, where they can have a future career and a longer career on a non-tab circuit, which provides for our Queensland bred horses another avenue. And beyond that, there's great careers in Queensland's a very rural and very large state, twice the size of New South Wales. So we're working with a few of the large pastoral trusts to run an off-the-track program so that when the racehorses finish in regional Queensland, they can go and have a competitive life on these big farms and ranches and do cattle work and other farming work.
It's a national issue. I mean, we're very divided state by state, unfortunately. It's just the way that a lot of the government, the regulatory bodies work, tied up with government.
The issue is the states all have different commercial setups, different legislative setups, different separation between integrity, welfare and commercial bodies like Queensland. And with that in mind, you've got to make sure that you're not letting horses slip through the cracks in your own home state. So it's really critical that we do a better job state by state. Then nationally, what are our minimum standards for care of horses before racing, during racing and after racing? And I think there is a really critical role for each state to play. And there are also the organisations that do a great job picking the horses that do slip through the cracks. So there's some wonderful charities such as Save a Horse Australia that's based in Queensland. They have 250,000 Facebook followers. And they rescue horses that have slipped through the cracks. Owners may have fallen on hard times, drought may have impacted, and they've got a great big foster network of horse fosterers. And they're doing a wonderful job. So organisations such as those also need the resource and support to make sure they're supporting the racing bodies.
And obviously the end of life is a big issue, isn't it? I mean, it needs to be talked about because not every horse is going to be suitable to be rehomed necessarily, and owners may not necessarily be able to pay for them just to be in a paddock the rest of their lives, their long lives. What's your thought on the best way to achieve a humane end of life for horses?
Well, I think the number one thing is quality of life for our horses is the most important thing. Whether that means when they're being bred at the racetrack and post the racetrack. Some horses are not fit to be rehomed. They might be injured, they might be highly strung, they might be cantankerous or even dangerous. Or they may be in a pain that's not known initially, but that may be a condition, so there needs to be humane euthanasia. The Save a Horse Foundation I mentioned to you previously do a great job with they do on-farm euthanasia. They give their horses the last 24 hours on this planet more love and affection and partnering up with their favourite other animals, and they do that really well. So I think there's some great learnings from there. A number of farms around Australia offer on-farm euthanasia, but there does need to be that. I mean, we can't cater for every horse. Not every horse is fit and sound and safe to be rehomed. And there's been stories of some hot-headed horses that have been wrongly rehomed with inexperienced riders. So not just partnering up the right horse with the right rider and owner, it's also a solution for those horses that aren't fit to be rehomed.
And it is also a thing, I guess, that you can't just expect someone to take over your horse, and they do cost a fair bit of money. I mean, at the bare bones, it's probably about $5,000 a year just for feed and getting the hooves done, etc. So there needs to be some level of assistance, doesn't there, I guess, for people that are taking them on. It's very hard for them to then pay for all the feed, particularly in drought time, and to be expected. There just aren't enough equestrian people to do that and pay for them, I wouldn't have thought.
Well, the vast majority do go on to great homes and great lives. Yes, it does cost money to transition a horse from racing to non-racing. I'd like to see the breaking in phase of horses become more diversified and give a horse a more all-round experience when they're being broken in. A lot of horses, when they leave the track, have never seen a cow, have never seen other animals, have never seen hills, have never seen different sights and sounds other than a racetrack. And that's what takes the time in retraining them. So a more diversified breaking in will lead to horses better prepared and more all-rounder, so that after racing they can go on and more readily transition into show jumping, rural, polo cross, whatever it happens to be.
The huge state of Queensland, a vital link in thoroughbred care around Australia. Coming up in Arrowfield Stud Strappers Stories, a young Western Australian track rider whose love of her mare led to a new generation of racehorses.